I think happiness is the ultimate goal, right? It's the thing we're all chasing, the feeling we expect to magically appear when we hit certain milestones. You know, it's the moment we imagine will finally arrive when we land that dream job, the perfect business, or snag that beach vacation we've all been planning for. But here's the truth. Happiness isn't free. And I'm not just talking about money. You know, happiness has hidden costs: time, energy, emotional resilience, and sometimes even painful sacrifices. You know, we rarely talk about those. Instead, the world presents happiness like a perfect package that'll drop into your lap if you just work hard enough or stay positive. Spoiler alert, that's not how it works. So I kind of just want to talk about the messy, complicated reality of happiness. Let's dig into the costs, the trade-offs, and why work is worth it. And along the way, I'll share a tool, which is Blakebill.com, that's made my own journey to a simpler, happier work-life balance so much easier. The myth of effortless happiness. It's not hard to get swept up in the illusion of effortless happiness. You see it everywhere, you know, on Instagram, in success stories, on carefully crafted social media profiles. It feels like everyone around you has cracked the code. There they are, smiling on pristine beaches, sipping cocktails, landing their dream jobs, running thriving businesses without breaking a sweat. The subtext is clear. Happiness is easy as long as you're doing life right. But here's the truth that they don't show you. Happiness isn't easy, it isn't effortless, and it sure hell isn't guaranteed. Every picture-perfect moment has a messy, unfiltered backstory that doesn't make the highlight reel. The tropical vacation, probably the result of months of financial scrimping or credit card juggling. You know, that booming business, you know, it's built on years of failure, rejection, and sacrifice. The Instagram-worthy life, a lot of it's just smoke and mirrors. The idea of effortless happiness is comforting, but it's also a lie. It tricks us into believing that if we're struggling, if we're tired, scared, or uncertain, then we must be doing something wrong. But the truth is, struggle is a part of the process. Happiness doesn't appear magically. It's built piece by piece with effort, intention, and often a whole lot of sweat. I used to think happiness was supposed to just happen. If I hit the right milestone, a good job, financial stability, personal accomplishments, then happiness would show up like a prize I finally earned. But even when I achieved those things, something always felt off. The effort to maintain them was exhausting, and I constantly felt like I was falling short. What I didn't realize at the time was that the happiness I was chasing wasn't the real deal. It was the kind of happiness society tells you, the kind that looks good on the outside but leaves you empty on the inside. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is that real happiness doesn't come wrapped in a pretty package. It comes in the quiet moments, the small wins, and yes, the struggles. It's the satisfaction of pushing through a project and seeing it come to life. It's the pride in taking a risk, even if it doesn't pan out exactly how you hoped. It's the peace of knowing you're building something meaningful, even if the road is longer and harder than you imagine. When you let go of the myth of effortless happiness, you know, everything changes. Instead of comparing yourself to curated images of impossible standards, you focus on what matters with you. You stop asking why my life isn't easy as theirs, and you start asking, what am I willing to work for? What makes me feel alive, even when it's hard? The myth of effortless happiness is dangerous because it makes us feel like we're failing when we're struggling. But the struggle is where the magic happens. It's where we grow, where we find clarity, where we figure out what really matters. Real happiness isn't about skipping the hard parts, it's about embracing them, knowing that they're a part of the bigger picture. So again, next time, if you catch yourself envying someone else's effortless life, you gotta take a step back. Remind yourself that you're seeing only the surface. Behind every success story is a lot of hard work, sacrifice, and resilience. Happiness isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be worth it. And when you stop chasing the illusion and start building your own path, that's where you'll find it. What are you willing to sacrifice? Happiness, as it turns out, isn't about having everything. That's one of the hardest lessons to learn. For a long time, I believed I could just balance it all, say yes to every opportunity, chase every goal, and somehow still have time for relationships, hobbies, and downtime that made life enjoyable. Guess what? It didn't work. The reality is, happiness is about choices, and every choice comes with a sacrifice. When you say yes to that one thing, you're inevitably saying no to something else. The question is, what are you willing to let go to make room for that truly matters? This isn't an easy question to answer. You know what? For me, it started acknowledging that I couldn't do it all. There is a temptation to believe that if you just work hard enough, you plan well enough, hustle long enough, you'll somehow find a way to balance everything perfectly. But happiness isn't about doing more. It's about doing the right things. For example, in my career, I realized taking on every client or project that came my way wasn't sustainable. I was constantly overbooked, stressed, and stretched too thin to deliver my best work. The sacrifice was clear. I had to let go of the idea that more clients equaled more success. Instead, I started focusing on projects that aligned with my values, paid fairly, and allowed me to grow creatively. You see, the truth is happiness often requires letting go of what's comfortable or familiar. Sometimes that means saying no to opportunities that look good on paper, but don't align with your bigger goals. Oftentimes, it means letting go of old habits like trying to control every detail or working around the clock to prove your worth. Sacrifice isn't easy, but it's necessary if you want to create a space for things that genuinely make you happy. The emotional cost nobody warns you about. Happiness sounds like it should be light and joyful, but the road to get there, it's oftenly emotionally heavy. What nobody tells you is that happiness comes from its own set of emotional costs, ones that can feel overwhelming if you're not prepared for them. Let's start with fear. There's a certain vulnerability that comes with pursuing happiness, whether it's starting a new business, pursuing a creative passion, or making a big life change. There's always that nagging voice in the back of your head asking, hey, what if this doesn't work? Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of looking foolish, it's all a part of the process. For me, this fear was front and center when I left a stable job to start freelancing. I remember spending countless nights second guessing my decisions, wondering if I was throwing away security for something that might never work. But here's what I learned. Fear isn't a stop sign, it's a signpost. It points to things that matter the most, the things that are worth fighting for. And every time I pushed through that fear, I found a little bit more confidence on the other side. Then there's the emotional weight of rejection. If you're chasing happiness, you're inevitably going to face rejection. Maybe it's a job application, a creative pitch, or even a personal relationship. It's never easy to hear no. But rejection isn't just a part of the process. It's also a powerful teacher. Every time I faced rejection, I learned something. How to improve, how to persevere, how to not take things so personally. And yet, rejection doesn't have to define the experience. That's why finding ways to reduce unnecessary emotional strain is so important. For instance, one of the most frustrating parts of freelancing used to be chasing down payments. After delivering the work, there's nothing worse than waiting weeks or even months for the money to be given to you that you've earned. You see, and that's where Blakebill comes in. With Blakebill, the moment I send a project, my client downloads it and I get paid immediately. There's no waiting, there's no awkward conversations, there's no stress. It's a small change, but it's made a huge difference in how I feel about my work. Another emotional cost that's hard to pin down is the exhaustion of self-doubt. It's easy to question whether you're making the right decisions or whether you're even capable of achieving the happiness you're working towards. For me, self-doubt crept in at the most unexpected times, right after a big win during a quiet moment of rejection. I've learned to acknowledge it without letting it take over, because here's the thing, self-doubt might never go away completely, but it doesn't have to hold you back. Happiness is never without its struggles, but those struggles are what make the words so much clearer and so much sweeter. Every tear, every doubt, every uncomfortable moment is a part of the process. When you look back, you'll see the emotional costs weren't just hurdles. They were stepping stones to a life that truly feels like yours. The problem with waiting for someday. Here's a trap I've fallen into more times than I can count. The someday mindset. I'll be happy when I get that big client. I'll be happy when I hit 6 figures. I'll be happy when I finally take a vacation. The problem with this is the way of thinking is that someday never comes. As soon as you hit the milestone, another one pops up. The finish line just keeps moving and you end up chasing happiness instead of enjoying it. What I've learned is that happiness isn't something you find at the end of the journey. It's something you build along the way. And the best way to start building it is just simplify your life. Cut out the distractions, the stressors, and the unnecessary noise. The rewards of embracing the process. The most surprising thing about happiness is that it's rarely about the destination. We spend so much time thinking about where we want to be, what successes look like, what the perfect life feels like, that we forget to notice the journey. But the truth is, the magic of happiness lies in the process, in those seemingly small everyday moments when you're doing the work, even when it's messy or hard. When you embrace the process, you shift your focus from getting to becoming. It's not about finally landing the dream client or achieving that specific goal. It's about who you're becoming in the pursuit to those things. It's about discipline you're building, the courage you're practicing, and the little victories you're achieving along the way. These moments are where true happiness grows, not in the big flashy milestones, but in the quiet satisfaction of progress. For me, one of the most rewarding shifts came when I stopped tying my happiness to outcomes and started finding joy in the work itself. Instead of focusing on how much money a project might bring in or how it would look on my portfolio, I started asking myself, do I enjoy this process? Am I learning something? Am I growing because of this? And the answer was always yes. The work became lighter. Even the hard days felt like steps forward and not obstacles. When you embrace the process, you also learn to celebrate the little wins. Maybe it's finally mastering a skill that used to intimidate you. Maybe it's hearing positive feedback from a client or seeing how far you've come when you've started. These moments are worth savoring because there's proof that you're on the right track. They remind you that happiness isn't the final destination. It's a series of moments when strung together create a life you're proud of. How to lighten the load. Let's be real, the journey to happiness is full full of challenges. There are deadlines to meet, setbacks to overcome, and endless little tasks that can make even the most exciting goals feel overwhelming. But here's the good news. While you can't avoid the work, you can make the load feel lighter. Happiness doesn't have to feel like a constant uphill climb. It's about finding ways to make the journey a lot easier and more sustainable. For me, one of my biggest game changers was realizing that I didn't have to do everything myself. There's this myth that success means grinding 24/7, doing all the hard stuff alone, and somehow thriving under the weight of it all. But the truth, the more successful, happiest people I know are the ones who have learned to delegate, automate, and focus on what truly matters. They know where to put their energy and know where to let it go. One of the first ways I lightened my load was by simplifying my workflow. When you're a freelancer or a small business owner, the admin work obviously feels endless. Again, you know what? Sending files, following up with invoices, managing deadlines, it's all necessary, but it eats up so much time. And again, that's where Blakebill comes in. Using Blakebill has made a massive difference in how I work. So it's so simple. I send the client's work through my platform, they download it, and then I get paid instantly. There's no more chasing payments. There's no more waiting around. It's like a weight's been lifted off my shoulders every time I use it. By taking care of logistical headaches, Blakebill gives me the more mental and emotional space to focus on the creative side of my work, the part that actually brings me joy. And so another way to lighten up the load is to stop overcommitting. For years, I say yes to everything, every project, every opportunity, every favor. I thought that's what you needed to do to succeed. But the more I said yes to things that didn't align with my goals, the heavier life really felt. Learning to say no wasn't easy, but it was one of the most freeing decisions I've ever made. When you protect your time and energy, you're able to give yourself the best things that really matter. And here's the funny thing. When you focus on the fewer things, you're actually achieving more because you're not constantly spread thin. You know, lightening the load is also about letting go of perfection. This was a tough one for me because I used to spend hours agonizing over every detail, worried that anything less than perfect would ruin my chances of success. But perfection is a trap. It keeps you stuck, constantly second guessing yourself. You know, the truth is, good enough is often exactly what you need to move forward. And the more you let go of perfection, the lighter the process feels. At the end of the day, lightening the load is about creating a space, not in just your schedule, but also in your mind and your heart. It's about letting go of the things that don't necessarily serve you, whether it's unnecessary tasks, toxic expectations, or the fear of failure. It's about building systems and habits that support your happiness instead of draining it. And it's about reorganizing that while work is hard, it doesn't have to feel heavy, the bottom line. Happiness isn't easy. It's definitely not free. But the effort, the risks, and the sacrifices, I'd say they're worth it. Again, next time, if you're feeling overwhelmed, remember this. Happiness isn't something you stumble into. It's something you build. Because here's the truth. Happiness may not be effortless, but it's always worth the price.